Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
With the better part of the upper Midwest completely blanketed in a devastating snowstorm, it feels like no better time than to talk a little Marquette basketball. This is the Real Chili Podcast. My name is Brian Henry, joined alongside by the editor-in-chief, the moral compass, the incomparable Mike Lavender. Mike, what's going on?
I am just ready to keep the people of Milwaukee, keep the people of the Midwest warm with our fiery Marquette basketball conversation if our top 10 ranking wasn't doing that already.
Oh, the ranking is hot. The takes will be hotter. Yeah, DC, not nearly as much snow as the rest of us.
No, we were in the low 40s today. We're
getting pounded here in the upper Midwest. I know that's where you natively hail from, so you're familiar with this, but yeah, not great for everyone from Milwaukee to Detroit, Cleveland, and everywhere in between.
Yeah, those wind chills, man. Up to negative 55 wind chills in Milwaukee over the coming days. Y'all stay safe out there.
So crank up the heat in the car, fire up the Real Chili Podcast. Here's what we got for you. No, we're coming to you with a podcast not after a game, which is what we typically do. Why is that? Well, I think it's worthy of mention today and worthy of a few minutes of discussion. For those that saw it, the Associated Press and coaches polls came out in the last 24 hours. And for the first time in more than 7 years, the Marquette Golden Eagles have cracked the top 10 in both polls. Now, it's January 28th. No one's won anything. You know, this could all change in a week because we know how a basketball season can go. But we thought it was worth taking a few minutes to step back and kind of look at things from a 30,000-foot view because it has been a bit of a tough road here. I mean, 7 years is a long time since being at this point, or 6 if you want to go back to the 2013 season in which they made it to the Elite Eight. Mike, how did it move anything in you when you saw the rankings come out to reach that number? Did 9 or 10 feel any different than 11 or 12?
The only difference that I felt, and this is the complete honest truth, in moving from 12 to 10, I automatically felt that we were overrated, and I felt a little exposed. I felt a little worried that this team was now insurmountably overrated. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm of the personal opinion that AP polls are somewhat of a beauty contest, but I do think there is a lot we can draw from the fact that there is national recognition on this program, whether it's 9, 10, 11, 12. There is national recognition on this program like there hasn't been in as many years as you just suggested. So I felt some pride. I was a little bit nervous, but I think the big picture takeaway for me is that we're back no matter what the exact ranking is.
Marquette currently in that top 10 right now, and this is, I think the thing that jumped out to me the most is you get excited. I mean, you're up there with North Carolina, Nevada, who's lights out this year, Kentucky, Michigan State, Michigan, Gonzaga, Virginia, Duke, Tennessee. That's your top 10, and I would agree with you. I think Marquette is, with Nevada this year, but they're excellent this year.
Yep.
Kind of the outlier of the group, and the one obviously you would. If I told you in 3 weeks we weren't ranked, while I would be surprised, it wouldn't be unfathomable. We're a severe injury from Marcus Howard away from, not as deep as any of those other teams that we just rattled off. But I wanted to take an opportunity with it to look at Wojo and how he's gotten here in year 5. I'll do it from my point of view. I've been critical of different moments, and I think have absolutely wondered aloud, is this the right direction, and is this the right guy for it? I don't think today, defines that, it 100% is. But this group, which we thought would be good this year, hasn't really missed many of its opportunities. The Indiana game is the only one I really feel like, God, that was a disappointing effort. We came out and got spanked right from the opening get-go. Outside of that, they've hung in there with every other opponent. They've beaten some really good teams, and they've taken care of business in the Big East, have themselves, right behind Villanova, fighting for potentially a conference championship. We probably have the conference player of the year on this team that was recruited and brought here. I think, for somebody such as myself, I think you got to stop and give the guy props and where we're presently at right now, because that we have an opportunity, at least going into the back half of the season, where we're in the mix, right?
We're absolutely in the mix. And look, at this point in the season, we're 18-3. We have a 7-game winning streak heading into Wednesday night against Butler. And you don't get that, and you don't get a top 10 ranking by mistake. So I think our collective recognition of Wojo is well overdue. Now, I think we've said, even you yourself have said in previous pods, let's see how this season continues to shake out. This isn't a final product yet. That's not to say that we expect something dramatic, something to change dramatically, but there's still a lot of basketball left to be played. How we measure this program, how I measure this program, is by victories in March. How far can this team advance in the NCAA tournament? When I think back on this season, I'm not going to think, oh, God, we finally got back into the top 10. I'm going to think, oh, we got to the Sweet 16.
That completely gets erased for you? If they got knocked out in the first or second round, it would be a complete wash for you?
I don't know if it would be a complete wash, but I don't – if you put me on the spot and said – you mentioned that it was 7 years ago or 6 years ago that we were ranked in the AP top 10.
7 years ago, yeah.
7 years ago. I have no recollection of that. I can tell you that's fair. The Jimmy Butler games, the Jay Crowder. I can tell you all these games in the tournament, that DJO game against Syracuse.
Right.
Those are the things that stick in my mind. I don't know if that's true for the majority of fans. Look, AP top 10, coaches top 9 is definitely an achievement. I still want to see more this season, but again, to me, it means we're back. We're getting talked about nationally by ESPN. We've got Coach K coming on the Wojo show. There is recognition and hype and buzz around this program, as there should be, and that's what we want. So to me, that's the main takeaway. That's what makes me smile. That's what makes me happy.
We'll get into Coach K and Wojo in just a minute here. For those that didn't hear that interview, we'll surmise it briefly. I agree with you, Mike. It's nothing to be satisfied with, but it's worth stopping and applauding, because I think they got here faster this season than I anticipated, and I think many of us did. And I'll double down on this. Be greedy. Like, the rosters here, they could win the Big East Conference this year. I mean, I think with the way Villanova's going right now, I think, what do we think? 14-4 wins the league?
That was Pete Mohan's prediction in the pod the other day.
That sounds about right.
Maybe sounds about right. Yeah. That means 3 more losses for Marquette down the stretch.
Right. Maybe 15 to really guarantee it, where you can only lose 2 more games. And that I mean, the amount of road games you have to play. Look, we're going into a place on Wednesday that we never win. Everybody knows it. We haven't won a Butler since 1990. It's just not an easy place to go play. You go on the road and get one there. I mean, you're going to be favored in pretty much every game outside of Nova.
We talked about this on the most recent pod. If you haven't listened to it, folks, rewind on the timeline there and listen to it real quick. Marquette's next 3 games: at Butler, home against St. John's, we know what happened there, and then home against Villanova. That is arguably one of the toughest, if not the toughest, 3-game stretches for Marquette this season. So when I say let's wait and see, Butler, Villanova, and St. John's are some of the best teams in the Big East, actually the remaining best teams in the Big East that we will play, and we haven't played almost all of those teams. So this team still has some proving and some work left to do. You said it before, Brian, but I agree. Definitely something to take some pride in with this AP rank.
And it's worth mentioning, and I'll do it because the homie Ben Steele had a nice article in the Journal Sentinel about it. If you didn't read it, hyping up the fact that Marquette boasts 2 top 10 ranked basketball teams now, as Carolyn Keeger's women's team is playing great. But he pointed out the fact that both coaches were hired 5 years ago, and it's taken that level of time. And it's interesting. I think where a lot of us were colored, and maybe the frustration early, not even necessarily with Wojo, but just with losing, is that Crean hit it pretty fast. Granted, he lucked into a generational player. Buzz really never took the train off the tracks. And for those of us, that's where our speaking for ourselves, that's where our fan base, our fandom goes back to into the early and mid 2000s. It was frustrating to hear words like, we got to build the program up. We got to, and it was kind of like, what do we need to build? We're good. We just made 8 straight NCAA tournaments. We don't need to build up to anything. We need to continue on the trajectory we're on. But I will say this, we have completely overhauled the way that Marquette plays basketball compared to that era. And it's different, but it's still good. And Wojo's found unique players. I mean, he took a chance on a 5'10" guard who we all were kind of like, he shoots well, but who knows? Marcus Howard's going to win the Big East Player of the Year this year, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a find.
It's a huge find. One of the most impressive things about all of this, when you're thinking about Wojciechowski and thinking about what he's put together at Marquette, I agree with your sentiment in saying that, with the question, what do you have to rebuild? We've been to the NCAA tournament 8 straight times, but what's so impressive to me is that very clearly in the job interview, or shortly thereafter, Wojo had a plan. And Wojo shared that plan with the people at Marquette that needed to know, obviously shared that plan with his coaching staff. He had a blueprint for what he wanted his plan to be. For all of us in the working world, for all students, for anybody, it can be hard to have a plan on paper and to implement it in the real world. As you said, because Brian, you got to take gambles on a 5'10", guard. But Wojo saw something in him that he thought was worth taking the risk. And so, I have never been the hugest proponent of Steve Wojciechowski, but I think it is tremendously difficult to take a vision from paper and from nothing and turn it into a top 10 program right now in winners of 7 in a row and 18-3.
And we don't know what the future will hold, but looks like we're going to have a roster going a year from now, you don't know what's going to happen, injuries, people, you don't know.
Which is part of the good thing, because with Buzz, you could never look beyond a year or two because there were so many JUCO transfers coming in. It was difficult to plan out. With Wojo, you look at kind of that scholarship sheet. You're like, okay, well, we got this guy for hopefully another 3 years, another 2 years. And there is a much greater semblance of stability than I ever felt with Buzz. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you're looking at potentially a very upperclassman heavy, seriously talented team a year from now.
Oh, God.
With postseason experience coming into a season where, the national championship is such a crapshoot, but you can sit there and go, hey, we have a roster that can get to a Final Four. You need some luck along the way, but we have a roster that's good enough to compete with that list of teams we rattled off in the top 10. You got to go beat Michigan State in a Sweet 16 game. You got to go beat Kansas. We have a roster that could theoretically do it. Yep. And which is, I think, a great way to pivot the conversation, Mike. You're talking about building and having the vision for it. For those that didn't hear it, on Wojo's weekly radio show with Steve the Homer True that they do at ESPN Radio Milwaukee just a couple days ago, had his old mentor, Coach K, dial into the program. I'd encourage you to go listen to the podcast. I didn't go listen to it right away. Pete Mohan was on us saying, hey, go take a listen to it. Very enlightening, I thought, Mike. Interesting. There's definitely a little bit of propaganda in there, but there's some stuff that I thought opened your eyes a little bit, and it showed a little bit of the Wojo relationship that I thought was interesting and showed well.
Yeah, I think it does show their relationship. I mean, I think with these things, there's some similarities to other lines of work in that these guys clearly have a personal relationship. They spent so much of their lives together that they definitely have a personal relationship. Whether that is the relationship that Coach K and Wojo are showing on this radio interview may be up for debate, but they clearly have a rapport. They clearly like each other. And the fact that one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time is calling into the Marquette, weekly radio show is cool in and of itself, no matter what you may think of Coach K. I do agree with you, even though it broke my heart a little bit. There was a little bit of propaganda and Coach K kissing the ring a little bit on Wojo's show. But, you got to do it.
It was Coach K bingo, and it was just perfect. He came on, dropped a Polish joke in the first 20 seconds. Yeah. I mean, play to the crowd, it's good. Then he goes on, talking about how, he had opportunities to leave Duke and how hard it was. But when the Marquette job opened up, Kay lit up and was like, that's the place. And then he went on about how much he loved Marquette. And there's just like he always pumps up all of his opponents, even though he knows he's going to beat Wake Forest by 45 friggin' points. He'll still do the same thing in his pressers. And then he came back in an even better classic Coach K, worked in the humble brag as they're talking about Dwayne Wade. Well, as you know, I've coached Dwayne with the USA basketball team. It's like, oh, man, just checking every single – he might have just landed a commitment from Milwaukee with that interview. Unbelievable. The guy is always on. Way to go. Keep being you, Kay. Keep being you.
Yeah, and, throwing in Kobe, throwing in all those other guys, it wasn't just D Wade, but definitely, it's about 15 minutes long. I wouldn't say drop everything you're doing and go for it, but since you're all going to be sheltered up in sub-zero temperatures for the next few days, you may want to check it out after this podcast.
It is worth a listen. Marquette will play Butler this upcoming Wednesday. It's a late tip, if I recall, Mike. 9 o'clock Eastern, I believe, for everybody on Wednesday night.
I actually have 6:30 Eastern on Fox Sports.
Oh, you're right. You're right. 6:30. Nope, 6:30 is correct. I was looking ahead down the road at a different game. 6:30 Eastern for Marquette and Butler. House money. We never win there. Don't expect to win there, but who knows? Maybe that might be the one that really gets me excited if they come in with a strong performance against Butler on Wednesday. Mike, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
I think this is going to be a tough game at Butler. I am really looking not just at this Butler game. I want to see, obviously, how we play on the road at Hinkle. I want to see how we respond to a St. John's team that kicked the crap out of us in New York. Obviously, that game's going to be back in Milwaukee. And then the big one that everyone has circled on their calendars is Villanova coming to Milwaukee on Saturday, February 9th. We're going to know exactly what this team is by the end of that stretch. Obviously, the Big East has a solid schedule, and we have played a good schedule up until this point. But shit's about to get real. And I'm excited to learn and see more about what this team is about. I think we're going to see good things. I don't know if that means we go 3-0. If I had to guess, I'd say we go 2-1. But it's going to be a fun few weeks of basketball.
Yes, it will. The Real Chili Podcast will be here to shepherd you through all of it. Marquette and Butler this Wednesday. We'll talk to you after the game. For Mike, I'm Brian, the rest of the fine gentlemen that contribute to this podcast that aren't here. But let's be honest, it's better when they're not here.
That's true.
We're not going to pull any punches. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Go Marquette.